Today's show is in 3 acts. Dr. Paul Thomas talks coronavirus, Fletcher Sharp on AJ Hinch and the new G League basketball team, and Devon O'Reilly with 5 fall beers. So welcome to your Daily Detroit for Friday, October 30th, 2020. I'm Jer Stays, and let's just get started. Joining me virtually is Dr. Paul Thomas, Plum Health Direct Primary Care. Welcome back to Daily Detroit, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me back, even though the circumstances aren't great.
Why does it just keep getting worse, man? In fact, that's my first question. We are at a situation where we're more than 3,000 average cases a day. We are recording this early on Friday morning. So the numbers I have from Thursday, if you were listening to the show, it's more than 3,600 confirmed cases. My gut says Friday is not going to be any better. How did we get here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's what we're all struggling with is some of us seem to be doing the right things in terms of wearing masks and keeping our physical distance. And we've made a ton of modifications to how we dine out and how we meet up with people, hopefully. But, there are big events still going on. There's big rallies going on, political rallies. And then there are other people who don't seem to think that this is a real thing who aren't wearing masks. And so despite our best efforts in the public health sphere, I think we're still finding that people aren't taking this as seriously as they should. And our case rate shows this. The other thing that I want to point to is there are many more options in terms of testing. So as the testing rates have gone up, so have the case rates. But, this is still a very significant increase in the number of cases. 3,600 is extremely high, and it's something that's shocking, frankly.
Well, and the key to that testing is that if there is more testing and less virus, that positive test rate goes down. It has been going up and up and up.
Exactly. And that's the scary part of this. We're still having a really high total positive rate for the diagnostic test.
So the next thing I want to get to is this Michigan Department of Health and Human Services order that basically kind of tightens up restrictions a little bit, tightens up restrictions on gatherings, but also includes contact tracing information at restaurants. What do you think about that in general? And then, I have a couple thoughts without adding to it. I want to know what you think.
This is really tough for our local bar and restaurant owners because they're just getting used to a certain mandate, and then with very little warning, another mandate is coming down. And it would have been nice to have maybe a week cushion to adapt to these mandates. But I've heard from my neighbors here in the Corktown community that it's really difficult to keep up with these changes in the mandates. I will say that it's a good idea to do contact tracing. It's a totally reasonable thing to keep track of who's coming into and out of your restaurant if you're open and operating, so that you know if there's a breakout, how to contact those folks who may have been exposed. I think that's a totally reasonable thing to do. I don't think it should be up to the owner of the restaurant. I think that there should be some sort of national strategy where we're able to collect that data on a national basis to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. When you're leaving it up to individual bar owners and restaurant owners, it just becomes this really difficult and arduous and cumbersome process. There has to be a better way, with a cell phone app or something like that came down from our federal government that would be easy to understand, that would have some privacy safeguards. Now you're just asking a bar owner to take your cell phone number, which is, I don't know if it's the best thing to do, but it's the option that our state government has chosen to go with.
I feel like a lot of our response, though, is kind of patchwork. We're just kind of hobbling along, and maybe that's part of why we're getting some of these new cases. It's very irregular. Enforcement is different in different areas. There are different parts of this region where it is chin strap city, and then there's other places that are doing really well. It's completely inconsistent, and without a general idea of what we all should be doing to even know if something works or not, it feels like we're still kind of fumbling in the dark.
It is, and it's really sad, and it's really unfortunate. You look at other nations that have done really well with this, Korea, Taiwan, there are more comprehensive, robust national strategies on how to address and handle the coronavirus. And here we are, one of the leading nations in the world, and we're fumbling through this pandemic. We just look silly on a national stage, and our citizens are suffering because of it. There's no other way to put it. We're less well off for this coronavirus because we haven't been able to work together as cohesively as we should. And our rugged individualism that in some ways makes us great is also our Achilles heel in a situation like the coronavirus pandemic.
Considering cases are the way they are, is this something where, since we have to put in this level of contact tracing, should people think twice about eating in? Should they think about it going to a takeout thing, or do they really have to evaluate their own risk profile?
The idea is that the fewer interactions you can have in a bar and a restaurant, the less likely you are to get the virus. So you are rolling the dice every time you go out to a bar or restaurant because those are your high risk areas. Likewise, if you go to a large political rally, maybe your high school in your area isn't having a restriction on how many people can go to the high school football game. If you're doing stuff like that, you're putting yourself at risk for catching and spreading the coronavirus. And that's something that as an individual, you have to decide. Unfortunately, I wish that there was a more national strategy to address this, but there isn't. So it leaves it up to individuals, and that tends to spur conflict among us. It's really hard to watch, people telling other people to wear masks because there's no clear national mandate, and then fights breaking out because of that or disagreement. And it's just a lot of acrimony over something that could be simple. Just saying, everybody wear a mask for the next 6 months and let's get this virus under control.
It hurt this morning when I woke up and a friend of the show moved to New Zealand a little over a year ago. And he and his partner were at a full concert in New Zealand because there were no issues. They've been able to get a hold of it. Now, I know New Zealand is an island and all that other stuff, but they literally have a hashtag, Team 5 Million, that they're all in it together. And it just hurt because both him and his partner, people I know well, they're there. It's just like it used to be. It's just like it used to be. And it was just like, wow, we could be much closer than we are.
Yeah, exactly. And I think New Zealand's a good example of that all in it together mentality. And I think Canada is another really good example. They have a very high population density in Ontario and in the southern parts of their provinces. And they've had a really strong national mentality of let's work together to control the coronavirus. And I think it's a lesson we haven't learned yet, which is really unfortunate.
So going into Thanksgiving, we've also got Halloween coming up. What do people need to think about with small gatherings? Because that's something that the state talked about, is that small gatherings are spreading the virus. And they were clear to say that you are 20 times more likely to get the virus in an indoor setting than an outdoor setting. What should people do? What should people think about?
You want to think about limiting your gatherings to 2 households. So fewer than 10 people total was the recommendation. And the less time you can spend together indoors, the lower your risk for catching the coronavirus. It's all common sense stuff, but the real question is, do we have the will to do it as like an American people, or are we going to disregard that and have our typical Thanksgiving traditions because it's tradition? And that's really tough. They also said, if you are going to gather with large groups, do it in an outdoor setting, maybe in a backyard or your front yard or something like that. And those are the key takeaways that I took from reading that recommendation.
Yeah. Well, I think people should really think about following them because we want to make sure that more people don't fall to this. I know that personally on my Facebook feed, the numbers of people who are starting to get it or have people in their family that are getting it. I had a night last week where there were 3 contacts of mine, and then a 4th one popped up with people in their families or close orbits that were fighting coronavirus and in a hospital.
Yeah, it's really sad because it does have a real effect. And, unfortunately, not everybody is like you who has a contact who has had it, but that day is coming where this virus is getting more and more widespread and more people are being affected. So virtually everyone is going to know somebody affected, sickened, hospitalized, or even, potentially killed by the coronavirus.
Well, I can say just be careful out there, right?
Yep, exactly. And, follow the guidelines, folks. This is why they're there. I'm glad that our state government is putting something together like this. It's unfortunate that it's not as effective because it is a patchwork and we are having people come to Michigan from other states, but we got to do our best to protect each other.
Well, Dr. Paul Thomas, plumhealthdpc.com and at plumhealthdpc on Twitter. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jared. Great to be here, and stay safe, everybody.
Joining me virtually is Fletcher Sharp. There's a couple of big developments in the local sports world. Fletch, welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right, first up, the big news is AJ Hinch. As we are recording this, it looks like he is going to be the Detroit Tigers' next manager. He is a controversial choice for some because he was the skipper of the Astros for their World Series championship run that included a sign-stealing scandal. Fletch, what's your read on this one?
Stepping aside from the scandal, career-wise as a manager, he's about 56%, which is decent enough you can ask for, especially considering that the Tigers really just need someone to get in there and help fix them. Given that he's tainted and toxic right now, I'm sure he'll take any job he can really get, even if it is the Tigers managerial job. But looking into the whole scandal, I know I'll be very much in the minority here, but it didn't really bother me as much because yes, I know sign stealing is very taboo in baseball, but even if you do know what pitch is coming, whether it's a 64 mile per hour breaking ball or 100 mile per hour fastball, you still have to hit it. And hitting a baseball from a professional baseball player is one of the top 3 hardest things to do in the world. And while it's not great that they had to bend the rules slightly towards themselves, it doesn't really bother me as much. Do I want them to do it with the Tigers? No. It doesn't really bother me as much as say, I don't know, someone cheating in a World Cup game or something.
Well, I'll tell you this, the GIFs or GIFs, whatever you want to call it, with Oscar the Grouch popping out of a trash can made me smile because I'm really conflicted on this one, man. I am not a big fan of cheating in general. I'm not a big fan of PEDs. I know that a lot of folks think about it as, well, if they win, it's great. But I'm really conflicted on this one. I know it might be a good move for the Tigers, and I always want to give people a chance to redeem themselves. It's not the high level thing that some other scandals have been, but it makes me really nervous, man.
I mean, yeah, because it makes you think about whether the success he had with the Astros was totally because of Trash Can Gate, or whether it was actually because he managed well and he had a year and a half of them cheating. So it makes you worry, will he join this team and will they be bad and then all of a sudden randomly spike and be good? Because if they are, it's going to harken back to, oh, this guy is a manager of when they were beaten on trash can lids. Is this happening with the Tigers or not? Are they cheating in some other way? And honestly, I don't exactly know how he's been handling it. I do know some of the Astros players have been handling it well. Some of them have not been handling it well. It's a mark you have to bear for a while. You don't get to then say, oh, well, it's over now. It happened. Teams, albeit a little bit crybaby-ish, are mad that their teams got edged out of a chance to win a championship because someone else used some other ways to get there. I understand that as a fan, but I'm just happy the Tigers are getting a competent manager. Whether he's successful or not, AJ Hinch is a competent manager. I'll give him credit there. We'll see how that pans out for the Tigers, though, in the next coming years.
Well, and little random fact, he actually played for the Tigers for 1 year, I believe. He was in the Tiger system.
Yep, 2003.
Interesting. All right, so the second thing is we've got a new basketball team, G League. What's the story with that?
The now former G League team for the Detroit Pistons, the Grand Rapids Drive, will be ceasing their partnership with the Pistons after this year, 2021. The Pistons higher-ups bought the Phoenix Suns G League organization, the North Arizona Suns, and are moving him to Detroit to play at Wayne State's new basketball arena, and they'll be known as the Motor City Cruise.
Now, that's a Detroit-y name if I ever heard of one.
Honestly, the name is kind of for me. I know G League teams and most in basketball, I can't really speak for baseball or any other league, but most G League teams have some sort of reference to their major team. For example, the Milwaukee Bucks, their team is known as the Herd.
Well, this was actually one that was picked by a fan. Dylan Martin of Grandville, Michigan, won a fan naming contest for this, and as part of it, he gets 4 courtside season tickets and a VIP package for the inaugural season. So, it's a fan-made name.
Yeah, I'm glad it's a fan-made name. A lot of people give grief to a lot of the G League names because they seem kind of bland, but I appreciate the fact that there's at least some link between teams. For example, the Washington Wizards team is the Capital City Go-Go. Go-Go is a type of dance made very popular, type of music made popular. The one that makes me scratch my head the most in the G League for the Memphis Grizzlies is the Memphis Hustle. I don't really know.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
A lot of the G League teams have names that link into their higher up level team. Only one that really makes me scratch my head the most besides Memphis is a Sioux Falls Skyforce because they've been around forever and I don't really know what a Skyforce is. Their mascot's not like a plane or like not like a bomber. It's just like a weird bird. So like I don't know what that is. But honestly, my biggest question I have going forward is what's going to happen to the Drive, because they're unaffiliated after this, and Michigan doesn't have two professional basketball teams. They don't have like the Pistons and someone else. It's not like the Lakers and the Clippers or the Knicks and the Nets. We don't need two G League teams. And Phoenix seems pretty cool to not have a G League team. It's not like a trade, so I'm not sure what's going to happen to the Grand Rapids Drive going forward. But it's a pretty good thing that's happening, especially with them moving into Wayne State's new facility.
That's 24 home games, right?
Right. If you can't make it to a Pistons game, you can at least go to a G League game. You can see some of the new upcoming talent. You might see a name you might have seen in, college basketball who kind of went away for some years, and now he's back playing in the G League. It's a good chance to like engage with the fans. So I think it's a smart move going forward.
It'll be a lot of fun, I think, especially tickets. I think are going to be cheaper for this, right?
Definitely. G League games typically are way cheaper than NBA tickets just because, again, you're not getting the bigger stars, but you're still getting the same amount of time, same amount of action, typically more entertaining offensive games because no one plays defense in the G League.
Well, and there's some great spots near where they're building that arena. I'm thinking about Pie Sci Pizza, a bunch of others. There's going to be 24 nights where it's not going to be 10,000 fans, but it's going to be a nice little uptick of business for those folks in that neighborhood.
Oh, definitely. They already get a decent amount of business, but they're gonna crush it when maybe one of the bigger G League teams comes to town. The Santa Cruz Warriors, who are from the Golden State Warriors, obviously, when they bring some of their younger talent through, or you have the Lakers team, Pie Sci is gonna just crush it in terms of revenue.
Well, Fletcher Sharp at Saint FDW on Twitter. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks for having me.
Joining me virtually, our man about town, Devon O'Reilly. And today, Devon, you have 5 fall beers that are all from Michigan to check out.
Yes, Jared, great to be here. It's a great time for beer. The weather is very conducive to drinking beer, and I know I'm a man about town usually, but I want to take this opportunity to talk about some beers that you can maybe bring back to your home and drink within your own friendly confines.
For sure. First up, I'm excited. I am all about these Michigan brands. You're talking about this La Parcella. What's that?
Jolly Pumpkin does some really cool seasonal type of beers. And the inside joke had always been that Jolly Pumpkin doesn't brew a pumpkin beer, which is odd, right?
Yeah.
But this is their offering. So it's a really good wild pumpkin ale. So because, Jolly Pumpkin prides themselves on their sour beers, this falls in line with that. And so it's a wild pumpkin ale. It's got a pumpkin spice and a little cacao nib to give it a little bit of sweetness. It's much more spicy and tart than just your normal kind of German Marzen October beer. So it's got a really, really nice flavor to it. It's sour, but also very smooth. It's available on tap at Jolly Pumpkin locations, as well as Longboard and Dearborn, which is a Jolly Pumpkin establishment. And then you can also pick it up at some various retailers around you, but it is seasonal. So you're going to want to get this as soon as you can.
So let's talk about the pumpkininess, though, because I'll tell you, the PSL or the pumpkin spice latte is something that, that'll cause fights between people. Where does it sit on that PSL scale?
You're not going to get too much of a spice. The spice, I think, helps balance out a little bit of the sourness. And it's also aged in oak. So they age it in oak barrels, which gives it a little bit more smoothness. And so that cuts some of the spice. The spice balances well with the sour. So, if you're saying pumpkin spice beer, you're not going to get too much of the spice, but you are going to get a little bit of the sourness, and you're going to taste a little bit of the oak with the pumpkin. And I think it's just a fantastic mixture. So when you're talking about nice sipping Oktoberfest or pumpkin beers, this is at the top of my list personally.
So next up is something from Griffin Claw.
For those of you who haven't been, highly recommend. They have their brewery and bar and restaurant in Birmingham. They have Lumen. So for those of you who don't know, Lumen in downtown Detroit in Beacon Park is from the owners of Griffin Claw. And so you can get a wide range of their Griffin Claw beers, including their seasonal offerings. And so Griffin Claw had previously done a Screamin Pumpkin Ale, which again was a little bit lighter, kind of a 5% pumpkin beer. And what they did, which I always appreciate as a strong beer drinker, is they took their Screamin Pumpkin and made it an Imperial Pumpkin by aging it in bourbon barrels. So you get a darker, a maltier feel to it. You get that little bit of a booziness with the bourbon, gets it up to a 9% alcohol. So you want to slow yourself when you drink this, really sip on this. But it's got a real good vanilla flavor and then also really like a nice oaky, deep richness to it and a lot of good spice. So it's a great sipping beer.
This next one has a couple of ingredients that call to me because not only am I a coffee person, but I am a Mackinac Fudge person. I'll be honest, I'm a little sad this year that my annual trip to Mackinac did not happen, and understandably why, but this might be able to heal my wounds a little bit, huh?
So you and me both, Jer, on the annual trip up to Mackinac is, unfortunate this year, but I always love to do it. So for those of you who don't know, Founders has multiple seasonal and special offerings, but probably their two most coveted and anticipated are their CBS, Canadian Breakfast Stout, and KBS, Kentucky Breakfast Stout, which they ferment in oak barrels and bourbon barrels and with Kentucky bourbon and get it really nice and bourbony and boozy. And this year they actually added a little bit of a twist on that, and they've added Mackinac Fudge coffee. And so their KBS Maple Mackinac Fudge is an amazing, amazing offering. Again, it's super deep. It's got a sweetness to it, but it also has a booziness to it. So think chocolatey, bourbony, Mackinac. It kind of tastes a little bit like you're taking a bite into some Mackinac Fudge when you're up on the island. But also it's 11% alcohol. So again, quite a boozy offering.
Yeah, I find these kinds of beers to be a good bridge. If you're a cocktail guy, like I'm a cocktail and liquor drinker myself, and I feel like these to be a good bridge into beers for folks who are used to more of the craft cocktail thing, and they're not as much as beer folks, because some of the lighter beers, they just don't entertain me as much. But these more full beers, I can drink those often.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good point, Jared, because some people who may kind of think of beer as like, well, I'm going to pound a few pints of a certain beer. These beers drink totally different. You're going to drink it out of a snifter.
You do not want to drink multiple pints of this in one night.
God, no. You will be on the floor. These will get you quicker than even, a spirit will. But these are meant to be really sipped, enjoyed, savored, like you would a glass of bourbon or even like a brandy or in that kind of regard. I think nowadays, people don't drink brandy anymore, right? I don't think so.
We should ask Randy if he drinks brandy.
Good question. But I find that people now drink these strong beers. Like in days of yore, people drank brandy. You drink them in a snifter, you really enjoy them, you kind of let the flavors come out. And so that's what this is all about. You have a couple glasses of this, at 11%, you're at basically a wine level ABV, but it's really nice. The flavors are really smooth. And on a cold day or cold night, this beer has a warming quality when you drink it.
So this next one on your list, this is the Detroit entrant.
The Atwater, yes, the Blocktoberfest. So Blocktoberfest is the Oktoberfest offering from Atwater Beer, as we all know, in downtown Detroit, or I should say in Rivertown. And this is your classic Oktoberfest beer, but just done really well and done locally. So it's a German-style Marzen. It's about 6% alcohol, so a little bit stronger than your run-of-the-mill beer. But, it's done in the kind of German Bavarian style. It's only available through November. You can get it on tap at, Atwater in Detroit. You can get it at most of your local purveyors of beer and spirits. It's on draft, bottle, can. It's just a really good drinking beer. This would be your best day drinking. So, Jerry, we talked about doing the pints. If you wanted to hoist a stein of one of these beers, Blocktoberfest would be your go-to.
For sure. If that's your jam, it sounds great. Now, this last one, we're getting into the IPA range, which is interesting. And there's also, when I read this description and kind of looked at it, I was thinking about those messages that will soon self-destruct and then they smoke and all that other kind of stuff. Because this one is apparently supposed to be drank as soon as possible. What's with this?
Yes. So I wanted to include an IPA because I know that market is just exploding in the beer sector. So I wanted to include something that was an IPA type, someone who's an IPA fiend can get their hands and taste this. But this is Stone Brewing, and they do a special series, Enjoy By ... And this is their Enjoy By IPA, and it's 10/31 is the date on it. And so they bottle this, can this as fresh as possible. As soon as it's done getting brewed, they put it into a can, put it into a bottle, and you're recommended to drink it within 37 days. And it's only offered for a little bit of time. So it was released right at the end of September. And so if you can still get your hands on this, I know it's still available. I know places that still have it, but you want to get your hands on this, especially if you're an IPA person. So it's going to be hoppy. It's going to be a little bit floral, but it's got that kind of October-y fall beer kind of flavor to it, and it's going to taste really, really fresh. You can taste kind of the freshness, especially with an IPA, because you get that kind of fresh fruit mouthfeel to it. So this is a really cool IPA. The can and the bottle look really cool. They're definitely decorated for Halloween. So it's Enjoy by 1031 IPA, and so look for that from Stone Brewing.
Well, and these are kind of niche picks. So Devon, where do you go to get these? Because I mean, some of them are going to be more available than others, but these are definitely this isn't like you're going to grab a Coors, man.
No, Jared, that would not be me. That wouldn't be a very interesting segment. So,
not the Natty Light. No Natty Light for you.
No, and I don't even think they have an October beer. But anywho, I'm not 22 anymore either, so that probably changes things. I wanted to pick some beers that are a little bit outside of the norm. Maybe if you haven't tried them, you can look for them, especially if you're a beer connoisseur or someone who likes to try new beers. These are ones that maybe you haven't encountered yet, maybe you have and you like them, but no, it's certainly not something you can find anywhere. A lot of the bars and the takeaway places that in Detroit and surrounding areas will have these, like I said, in bottles and cans. Personally, my local beer shop is 8 Degrees Plato, which they have a location in Midtown on Cass. They have an incredible selection of beers. You can actually taste a lot of the beers right there because they have taps too. They're likely available at your holiday market. Plum Market, which has multiple locations, also has a really incredible selection of beer. So if you haven't done this yet, you should definitely identify your closest beer purveyor who has a really good selection, because as the months get colder, you're going to want to know where you can get some nice fall and even winter beers.
I know engineer Randy recommended Holiday Market in our internal chat, so I wanted to make sure to double down on that suggestion. But I also want to share with listeners, if you've got a beer or booze spot that you absolutely love to get a hold of things, I think you should email us at dailydetroit@gmail.com so that we can give them a shout out the next time we do this. Because look, this is a geographically large region. I know there's all kinds of neat places. I know that producer Cheyenne likes Park Place over in Grosse Pointe Park. There's just all kinds of different places to grab stuff. And it's really important to support these local businesses, especially right now. So we would love to hear about them at dailydetroit@gmail.com.
Yeah, Jared, thanks for pointing that out. I would also love to hear more about people's picks and what folks like in terms of their beer, especially in the fall. There's so many great options. All the beers have a good spice to them. They have almost like a harvesty type of flavor. And then you get into the really deep late November type of beers like the bourbon barrel age that I mentioned. So really fall is a fantastic season for beer offerings, especially in Michigan.
Well, Devon O'Reilly, man about town, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
And that is the end of the show for today and this week. As it's Friday, thanks are in order. Now, this time, I would hope that the rest of the team understands that this day is a special day. Cheyenne Oserini, associate producer, it is her birthday. I want to specifically thank her and wish her a happy birthday for all she does. She helps book guests. She helps edit the show. She's important to what we do here. Happy birthday. Thanks for all you do on the podcast. Wanted to quickly mention that we now have a new membership tier, 2 of them actually. We have gotten a lot of feedback that folks who own businesses or organizations want to chip in. They want to do it through their organization. We have 2 new tiers for that. They're very affordable and a great way to get the word out about what you're doing. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Have a good weekend. Take care of each other, and we'll get through this together.